In just 1 week, several teenagers went missing across London, and soon after, all the parents received a chilling phone call from the killer. Following the location given, they arrived at an abandoned villa on the outskirts of the city. But the moment they pushed open the door, the air inside seemed to freeze. Children's bodies were neatly hung from the ceiling, their deaths gruesome and horrifying. As the grieving parents broke down in despair beneath the corpses, the phone placed in the center of the room suddenly burst into flames. The flames spread along the cross-shaped markings on the wall until they consumed the entire room, and at the same time, the killer was watching everything from outside the window. He deliberately tapped on the glass to draw attention, and eerily, as the tapping grew faster, his face began to shift and reveal the photographs of the murdered children. The case threw all of London into a state of panic, placing immense pressure on Ryan, the newly appointed chief inspector. But it wasn't only the London police keeping a close eye on the situation. An influential criminal was also watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. He had been sentenced to life imprisonment on multiple serious charges and was sent to Hoxnall Prison, the highest security facility, to serve out his long sentence. He was none other than John Luther, once London's most formidable chief inspector. During his career, Luther had solved countless major cases, which also earned him a long list of enemies within the prison. To stay alive, he was forced to remain constantly on guard. But tonight, the unexpected happened. Guards noticed on the surveillance cameras that an inmate was about to hang himself. As they unlocked the cell to stop him, they were caught off guard when the prisoners suddenly fought back. He moved with incredible speed, knocking 2 guards to the ground with just a few punches. After taking their keys, he freed all the high-security inmates, each one a hardened killer. Now, their target was Luther, locked in a cell on the 2nd floor. Sensing danger, Luther quickly pushed his bed against the door, but when the prisoners failed to break it down, they poured gasoline through the cracks and set it ablaze. As they prepared to storm in, Luther acted decisively. Using his mattress as a shield, he charged through the roaring flames and shoved several of them back. With his life on the line, Luther had no choice but to fight his way out with his fists. But he was no match for their overwhelming numbers, and as more prisoners joined the fight, Luther soon ran out of strength and was caught in a chokehold. Fortunately, the guards intervened just in time, throwing stun grenades to regain control of the situation. With so many inmates involved in the riot, the prison was forced to deploy high-pressure water cannons to subdue the chaos. Afterward, fearing for Luther's safety, the authorities decided to transfer him overnight to another facility. Yet halfway through the journey, the prison transport was ambushed by a group of armed assailants. Armed with shotguns and trained in precision, they quickly overpowered the police and abducted Luther, while law enforcement received the grim news almost immediately.
Luther's out.
Luther's what?
Out.
It turned out that on the day after the teenagers were murdered, Luther had received a mysterious letter in prison containing nothing but 3 numbers. After pondering briefly, he quickly realized its meaning. Using the numbers to tune the radio frequency, he was horrified to hear the heart-wrenching cries for help from the teenagers before they were killed. Throughout the broadcast, the killer relentlessly taunted and insulted Luther, and in the end, he went even further, issuing a direct challenge to London's former greatest detective. And it was this very act that finally pushed Luther over the edge. Using his network of contacts within the police force, he orchestrated his prison break, aided by people who once owed him their freedom or their lives. Meanwhile, the arrogant killer had no idea he had just provoked something far greater than he could handle, because once Detective Luther was set in motion, every dark corner of London would tremble. The killer continued to taunt him by hijacking radio broadcast frequencies to make contact, but Luther knew that if he could successfully trace the origin of the signal, he might finally uncover the killer's location. Guided by the coordinates from his tracking device, Luther arrived at a tattoo parlor, where the man inside grew visibly nervous upon realizing why he was there. Inside, Luther discovered the transceiver used to power the broadcast station, along with a disposable phone the killer had used to contact the man. Meanwhile, across London, the police were under immense pressure. Not only did they need to catch the sadistic murderer of the teenagers, but they also had to remain on high alert for the fugitive Luther. Using the citywide surveillance system, the SWAT team quickly pinpointed his location, but by the time they arrived, Luther had already vanished without a trace. The tattoo shop owner was clearly just a pawn, with the phone having been mailed to him directly by the killer. The disposable number on it would expire after 24 hours, meaning tonight was the only chance to catch him. After a moment's thought, Luther dialed the number of his former boss, Hank, a man who had been his superior for over a decade and was now the one person he could truly trust. If the police were willing to help by using the satellite tracking system to locate the killer's signal, Luther promised he would have a way to bring him to justice. In exchange, once the killer was caught, Luther agreed to surrender himself to the authorities. But more than catching the criminal, Hank was deeply concerned for Luther's safety. Over the years, their relationship had been both mentor and friend, and to Hank, Luther was like a child he had personally raised. Once the killer's phone location was successfully locked in, Hank immediately issued the order for action. All SWAT units were to move to the scene without delay, with strict instructions to guarantee Luther's safety at all costs. According to the satellite coordinates, the killer was at Piccadilly Circus, the heart of London, where 5 major streets converge in a bustling intersection. The constant flow of pedestrians made the arrest even more challenging, but relying on his sharp instincts, Luther quickly spotted the suspicious individual. Unexpectedly, the man was not only quick to react but also extremely fast with his blade. Any step forward by Luther could have meant instant death for the hostage. Seeing this, Luther immediately led his team to provide support at the target's location. Surrounded by Luther and the SWAT officers, Rob remained unervingly calm, even flashing a sinister smile. As the clock in the square struck midnight, the real drama finally began. From the surrounding high-rises, people kept jumping down, each wearing a portable camera on their chest, broadcasting their deaths live for the world to see. Meanwhile, several vehicles, maliciously manipulated, plowed into the crowd, sending screams echoing through the square as chaos erupted instantly. Seizing the moment, Rob turned and sprinted into the subway entrance. Without hesitation, Luther followed closely, but Rob's speed was astonishing. He had already darted through the crowd and leapt into the tunnel. By the time Luther caught up, Rob had vanished without a trace. But the fleeing rats on the ground were clearly terrified, so following their path should have led Luther straight to Rob. Unexpectedly, he was ambushed. Though small in stature, Rob was incredibly agile and deadly with a knife. After several exchanges, even the towering Luther couldn't gain the upper hand. In the end, Rob slashed Luther across the abdomen, forcing him to remove his jacket and attempt a bare-handed disarm. Just as Luther was about to subdue Rob, the SWAT team arrived at the scene. Facing 2 criminals at once, the SWAT officer chose to subdue the fleeing Luther first before going after the knife-wielding Rob. But that decision cost him his life. Rob aimed for the officer's artery, slashing him, and then managed to escape. Luther, worried for the officer's safety, hesitated to leave, a restraint that earned the respect of another SWAT member. Recognizing that Luther had been imprisoned unjustly, he allowed him to go before the rest of the team arrived. Meanwhile, with the serial killer's face now exposed, Ryan quickly retrieved Rob's full dossier from the database. Her tech company controlled over 80% of London's private accounts, making her an undisputed hidden billionaire. But just as Chief Inspector Ryan was about to issue a warrant, she received a call from her daughter. It turned out that after escaping, Rob had gone straight to Ryan's home and kidnapped her daughter. In exchange, he demanded that Ryan find a way to eliminate Luther. Although she verbally agreed, Ryan did not follow Rob's plan, knowing full well that if Luther were killed, she would never see her daughter again. Using the police network's surveillance system, she quickly pinpointed Luther's location. Although it was their first meeting, the 2 inspectors shared an unspoken understanding. Since Ryan had come alone without bringing any officers, Luther suspected that the current chief inspector must be carrying a personal burden.
What has he got on you?
My daughter, sir.
Rob never expected that his actions would push 2 rival inspectors to join forces. Records revealed that Rob had once been married, but years ago, his wife had been horribly disfigured in an arson attack. Traumatized, she had been confined to a sanatorium ever since, barely surviving. For years, no one believed a word she said, assuming her mind had been damaged by the fire. It wasn't until she spoke that Luther and Ryan realized they were now facing true evil. On the surface, Rob appeared to be the CEO of a publicly listed tech company, but behind the scenes, he hacked into users' computers to spy on their private lives. Among the information he uncovered were deeply personal or illicit materials, which he exploited to blackmail his victims, gradually driving them to the brink. Some were even willing to end their own lives to protect their unspoken secrets, while Rob documented their final moments through live streams on the dark web. After discovering her husband's crimes, the woman had tried to stop him, only to be trapped forever in a fire as Rob showed no regard for their marital bond. According to her, Rob belonged to a mysterious organization called the Red Cell, whose members operated from a white fortress situated on a glacier in Norway. Even Luther, who had faced countless extreme situations, was chilled to the bone by the hundreds of corpses buried under the ice near the fortress. It was nothing short of a human hell, and if they didn't hurry, Ryan's daughter might already be in mortal danger. But as soon as they entered the fortress, they were ambushed. Ryan was first deceived by a corpse disguised as her daughter, leaving her devastated, while Luther followed a hidden door in the glacier straight to the legendary Red Cell chamber. Unsurprisingly, both fell into Rob's trap. To entertain the tens of thousands watching on camera, Rob demanded that Luther use the hammer in his hand to personally end Ryan's life. If he refused, Ryan's daughter would suffocate to death. Unexpectedly, Luther suddenly sprang into action. Sensing the danger, Rob activated the chamber's self-destruct system, but Luther summoned all his strength and chased out just as the iron door slammed shut. While Rob was starting the car, Luther smashed the glass and yanked the door open. Rob tried to turn the wheel, but the vehicle's powerful momentum hurled Luther inside. Though he had long accepted the risk to his own life, Luther knew he had to first disable the self-destruct switch on Rob's phone. This was the key to ensuring Ryan and her daughter could survive. In a desperate move, Luther used the seatbelt to tightly choke Rob's neck as the car accelerated uncontrollably. Despite pulling the handbrake with all his might, the vehicle crashed into a snowbank, launched into the air, and slammed heavily onto the ice. Rob tried several times to escape, but Luther held him firmly each time. Realizing he couldn't break free, Rob threw his phone to distract Luther, then managed to crawl out of the car and swim toward the ice. Luther, however, went down with the car, sinking to the bottom of the lake. Perhaps even the vengeful spirits of those Rob had killed refused to let him go. He struggled desperately but could never find an escape, ultimately becoming one of the hundreds of corpses beneath the ice. Beneath him, Luther used the last of his strength to deactivate the chamber's self-destruct system. As the doors slowly opened, Ryan and her daughter finally escaped danger. But Luther's limbs were completely frozen, leaving him powerless to leave the icy lake. Just as he had accepted his fate and closed his eyes, Hank arrived and saved him. To Hank, Luther was like a child who would never truly grow up, and his role was to follow him closely, ensuring he returned safely at the most critical moments. Although Luther had once again achieved a great feat, the inspector, burdened with multiple serious crimes, had to return to prison to serve out the remainder of his long sentence. The police dispatched a special aircraft to transport London's greatest detective overnight, but when Luther awoke, he found himself placed in a secret military safe house. Hank had also repaired Luther's favorite jacket, knowing that the moments ahead would hold extraordinary significance for him. These people were far above anyone he had ever faced. They could even erase all of Luther's crimes with ease. Hank understood fully what it would mean if Luther were chosen by them. For Luther, compared to the small-scale London Major Crimes Unit, this might be a far better destiny. And as John Luther was summoned by a higher-level, mysterious organization, the former greatest detective of London was about to embark on an entirely new journey.